Recording in progress.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Roisman, and I am co-organizer of InnovateQA events and Meetup. Together with Tatiana Arbuzova, we are in the business of bringing education to people in QA and test automation and data testing. Today we have Sandesh Gawande, who is the founder of IceDQ, which is, I would say, data quality firm, and Sandesh can tell more about this. This is the third uh, webinar in the series for QA. The first two webinars were recorded, and now we have them placed on YouTube channel. And Dmitro here is managing the YouTube channel. Do you want to briefly tell us like what's the name of it so everybody knows?
I can send you the link. The name is
Yeah, can you please
InnovateQA.
post the link in this chat?
Yeah, I can
Would be
send you the
great.
link.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'm gonna give the microphone to Sandesh. Sandesh, welcome. Sandesh is one of the well-known experts in data quality, and I want to welcome him again. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with our audience. And we would love to hear today about the data ops for QA team, automate data testing, and data monitoring. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and Sandesh will address them when he has the time.
Hi, everybody. This is Sandesh. I'm the founder for IceDQ, which we are involved in data testing, monitoring, and observability. And the purpose of this meeting is to educate QA people and teams on the data testing and data ops and data monitoring side of the business. So because many of the QA know a lot about application development, application testing, and things like that. But the data side of the business is always missed. And so with this webinar, we are trying to cover that aspect of the business. So earlier we had two sessions. One was on ETL testing, and other was ETL and data warehouse testing. That was April 10th. On May 8th, we had data migration testing. And today on June 12th, we are going to cover data ops and data monitoring, and they're kind of related to data testing. And so there will be people who are new, there will be some gaps in knowledge, but I will try to do some justice in the background, but I can't really because of the timing, can't go back to each and every aspect of ETL testing and data warehouse testing. So with that, let's move on. Anybody, if you look at this DevOps word, DataOps, the DataOps word came from DevOps, and the DevOps word was coined by Patrick DeBois in 2009. And the problem that he noticed is when people do testing or deploy code in production, the problem that they found out that when the system is deployed in production, the business users usually complain. And the reason that is there is lack of data testing and integration of dev team and operations team. So people would do their work and just throw the code or data or the process or data pipelines across the wall in the production environment, and then there used to be issue. So he came up with this concept of combining the development team and the operations team and deliver something together. So with that background, let's move on to the next. The basic idea again is in DevOps or DataOps is there is a development team, there is a deployment team, there is testing rule, and there is a monitoring and operations team. You want all of them on one side of the wall, not two sides of the wall, and the complaining each other. And there is a article on IceDQ on DataOps implementation guide. If you are interested, you can go and see in details. I'll cover some of it and some other things around data testing. So one of the key point that happens in development of data-centric projects is if you look at this top side, right? You get business requirements, you get ETL data mapping documents, and you develop ETL, right? Then you get QA requirement, you start getting testing requirements after development. Then you develop the test, then you run the test, and then you finally release into production. So this is a problem, and if you want to implement a data ops, this doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because you are doing this sequentially. And the way from linear, you want to go to the data ops approach, where as you get business requirement and develop the ETL process, at the same time, you get the QA requirement in parallel and develop the test in parallel, because if you have the source tables and the target table, there is no reason for you to wait for the ETL code to be finished. And then you can develop all this thing in parallel, run the test, and release this thing in production. So basically, if you implement this data ops non-linear approach, you can actually shrink the project timeline by 33%. So that's one of the important takeaway from this slide. The other thing, the problem with data testing is when you are creating tests, many people create this test in their desktop, or they store it somewhere, and that creates a problem, because when you want to see all the tests that you are created in one place, you can't find it. And if you can't find it, then you can't do regression testing. The tester goes away, he gets fired, or he gets promoted, or he gets transferred. The knowledge is lost. So we want a centralized QA repository for all the testing requirements. So that's one of the key feature of data ops. So we talked about number one, we talked about this non-linear development and testing. And then the second point is creating a centralized repository for all the rules. And you need a product, or you need some kind of tool. You can't do it in a desktop. So there are some requirements around it, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes. The other thing is, this is very interesting, is as there are many people who work in data pipelines, they have issues in terms of they don't think ETL processes and data processes as code, and they don't build these. If you have work in QA in other fields, usually there will be data pipelines, there will be build, deploy, all those things will be done, but they don't do it in data centric projects. So we want to change that. So at IceDQ, one of the things we talk about is if you develop the ETL code, you also develop the regression pack and test cases and test rules and package them together. So when you're deploying, you are actually using this to certify your data pipeline. The another very, very, very important aspect of data ops or data testing or data monitoring is when you develop the ETL pipelines, you test it, but then those test cases, you throw them away when you deploy it in production. Instead, what we are saying here is you deploy the test cases as part of your deployment of your ETL process, and they get embedded into the system. So that enables you white box monitoring, means you are aware of what should be monitored as part of your testing. You embed them in as you deploy the ETL code. You also deploy the white box monitors in the system, and that makes the system observable for operations team. And I'll give an example in automobile. If you buy a car, you already get the speed gauge, the thermostat, and all those things you already get built into the car. And that is the same idea when you are doing data pipelines. You need to embed some processes into the system, auditing, monitoring processes into the system, so you can monitor that in your production process. So that is first part of the discussion over today. The second part. Okay, so what does it mean? So here is a typical a data factory. You can call it a data warehouse, you can call it a data lake, whatever you want to do. But conceptually, what happens is you get from source systems, you get data in files or database, you load into a staging area or a data lake. From there, you load into a data warehouse. From there, you go into data marts, or you go into, you create extracts and give it to other people. And then finally, it is possible that the data mart is exposed to the reporting tools, and then you get all kind of analytics and reporting and all that. So if you are in production, this is what is running in your data factory. The aspect that comes into the data ops side, remember what I said, you had to think about as part of your deployment, you have to deploy some monitors that you will monitor, use them in production. So what are some of the things you're doing? Number one, if the files and databases coming to you, do you know there's so much of data is coming, if the data that you received is correct or not? Because if the input is incorrect, your pipeline will be wrong. So that's one of the things you need to do. The second aspect is if you are loading or transforming the data from a source to stage or stage to warehouse, how do you know that the data is transformed correctly, loaded correctly? So that is one of the aspects you need to worry about. And you need to think about this, how will I do it? There are other things as well, like, you have a BI report that is coming in. How do you know the numbers that you are seeing in the dashboard is actually matching with the data in the database? So these are some of the things that you need to consider if you want to monitor your data factory. Going forward. So let's take an example of input data monitoring, and I'll take some examples and we can go with it. So here I have received a file, and I am saying, hey, I need to validate the incoming file. And because, so let's say if this is a customer ID, full name, email, country code or something. So I need to make, one of the rules could be, when I receive a data file, the email cannot be null. And if you see here, some of the emails, they are empty. There are 2 emails that is not there. 3 emails are there. For 3 records, the emails are there. For 2 records, the emails are not there. So this is a problem. Now, if you process dirty data like that, you will have a problem. And then the question is, hey, if I'm monitoring it, if the data is there, should I proceed or not proceed? But to take that decision, you need to monitor or audit that or validate the data. And how do you do that? So here in IceDQ, you can create rules. For example, I'm doing a pattern match on the email. I'm looking for range check, gender check. I'm creating all these kind of validations. And when the validations are run, I can see which rules have passed. For example, the account number, if you look at the account number rule, I think the account number should not be null, and none of these account numbers are null. But if you look at the last name, out of 97 records, 95 are good, 2 are bad. Why 2 are bad? Because the last name is empty. You see this red here. So there is a problem. So now you can have sophisticated rules on top of it to say, if this is wrong, should I continue the pipeline or not continue the pipeline? And then similarly, there are other fields, and there are rules and other things that we can check. So this is what we call as source validation or file validation, data validation that is coming as input to your data factory. The second part. Now, see, the earlier rules that we created over here, the first one, the source validation, is fundamentally what it was doing. It was checking the data against what you know in your brain, the rules that you know, the checks that you know. But many times, what you need to check depends on what you were given. So if I receive 100 records, I need to load 100 records. If I receive 500 records, I need to load 500 records. So the simple validation concept will not work here. So what we need to do is what we call as data reconciliation. So here what I'm saying is, if I received 100 records, so for example, if you look here, there is a customer records, and here is Arizona and Florida in abbreviated format. And if you look at the right side, Arizona and Florida is written in full name, like the complete name is written there. So this is not acceptable. So the way to do is a reconciliation rule, and I'll show example of reconciliation rule. So there is a customer file on the left side, customer stage on the right hand side, and I can do a comparison. I'll say, hey, this member ID or customer ID is my unique key. Over this, compare the records. And then if you look at this, I'm saying there are how many? 4,000, I forgot the numbers. There are 4,076 record, 4,976 record. Out of that, 15 date of birth don't match. If you look, the source record 1964 and it's 1,111. So records are not matching. So there is a problem here. If you look, there are some other rules over here. They are not apparent, but by comparing my input data and the output data, I can figure out if the data transformation was done correctly. And why this can happen is many times the processing can be done twice. The processing might get killed in between. So instead of loading 100 records, you only loaded 25 records and the process died and you didn't know about it. So there are a lot of issues that can come into production, and this can be captured and identified with IceDQ. Okay, now if you go further, here, see, this was a very simple system where you were comparing source and target, right? But sometimes you also do transformations, right? So here what is happening, again, let's go back. Here we just validate the source files. Here we compared source with the target. Now I want to do some transformation and check it. In this example, when the data comes in, the first name and last name are separate, but when I load into the warehouse, it is the complete name. So again, you'll have to do some kind of reconciliation to check it, but you need advanced transformation rules for that, to check that. Now, so here in this example, there are sales transactions and sales summary done at the daily level. So you will have to create rules in IceDQ where you say, hey, I have 100 records, $1 million, $1, $3 transaction. So 3 transaction dollar each, and I have summarized on the right hand side by the day. So the $3 over here should, if I aggregate each record here, then it should match the $3 on the right hand side. So this is some transformation reconciliation that you can do. And then see, so far what we have done is, again, we did source data validation, source to target reconciliation, and ETL reconciliation, right? Source, it was just validation. In source to target reconciliation, we were checking the data as it is more or less. ETL reconciliation or transformation reconciliation, I was checking if the data transformation was done correctly. However, this does not guarantee that the data is valid from business point of view. And how do you make sure that the data is valid from business point of view? You need business validation. For example, if you look at net amount, what is net amount? It's gross amount minus commission, minus taxes, minus fees, right? This has nothing to do with how you transform the data, how you loaded the data. I don't care what you provided. These are universal business rules, and that my data should satisfy that. So here there is one example where we are checking the net amount should be gross amount minus commission, minus taxes, minus fees. And if they don't match, then we know there is a problem with the data. This is the same similar example. Then there is a business reconciliation example. If you're running a production system, you know you cannot ship without order without having an order ID with you. So you can create business reconciliation rules where you say, hey, if I have a million, find me all the shipments for which orders don't exist. So if you look here, there are 4 shipments, but there are only 2 orders. So obviously there is some problem with the data. And then you can, in IceDQ or in a platform like this, you can create these rules and you can monitor your production data, or you can do business rules. So let's divide this into 2 parts. Up to here, 1, 2, 3, these are technical rules. From here, these are mostly business rules where they are independent of how the data was transformed, but I need to check it from business point of view. Now, from here, I'm not, so here this is the same example in a better picture. Basically, I'm checking my sales transaction and shipping. So show me the transaction ID or the order ID and see if, if the for each shipment, if the sales or transaction ID exists or not exists, right? Now, there is another component to it. If you are doing monitoring, so you need to monitor your reports as well, because the data in your reports might not be accurate as to what the data is represented in the database. So here I have example of business data validation. For example, make sure on the BI report sales amount is not zero, something like that. You can have rules like that. You can do business reconciliation, where you're comparing the data in the table with the data in the report. So that's another example of business reconciliation on BI reports. Now, see, it's not just BI reports, but the idea here is ultimately you are reporting some BI data. And if you are wrong, whatever you're reporting, so there are compliance issues, fines, and reputations, and you want to avoid this thing. How do you do this? We talked earlier about data ops, and now we're talking about a little bit monitoring. So how you can do it is you have to stop the faulty process before it creates bad data. And how do you do it? You have to stop the faulty process from running, or if the faulty process has run, you don't allow the next process to continue. Because if you allow the next process to continue, what will happen is it will just mix, you get good data and then you integrate bad data, then the whole data is bad. So, and you cannot undo once the data is integrated. It's very difficult to undo because you will have to go back 2 days, 1 day, 24 hours back, restore the database and then start the process again, and then just chaos. And you never want to do. So one of the principles of DevOps and DataOps or monitoring is to stop the faulty process before it can do the damage. The second thing is, if the damage, whatever the damage is done or minimum damage is done, you need to alert and notify appropriate people so they can take immediate action. So there is a difference between monitoring and observability in that sense. Is here your consumer is the operations people, and you want to make sure that the operations people are notified on time and they can stop the process. Observability is like, the data is produced and then we can have another meeting on that. But here the whole idea is to stop the process immediately when something goes wrong. Then once you alert somebody, what does he know? You have to tell him, hey, here is the underlying example of the data where something is wrong. And you have to, for this, you need to provide this exception reports that I showed you earlier, which are taken, and then you can actually use these exception reports to go and correct the issues, because looking at the data, you will understand what the issue is. And then you need general audit dashboard, overall last 10 days, what has happened, what last 20 days, how many issues are there, last 1 year, how many issues are there, who is giving more issues, what data contracts are not being satisfied, and things like that. So this is the basic idea about data, what you call as data ops and data monitoring that we need to implement together. If you go back, and again, I added this slide for the people who have not attended the earlier sessions. Fundamentally, you need to validate and reconcile the data. When you have a fixed expectations against the data, for example, I know that the net amount is a gross amount minus commission, minus taxes, minus fees is fixed. I can do a validation rule. And if my checks or my tests or my monitors are dependent on the incoming data and the expectations are dynamic, then I need to create a reconciliation rules to monitor my system. Anything beyond this, it will be a longer discussion, but fundamentally take these two inputs. Number one, you need to integrate your development team with your operations team, number one. Number two, you need to take the tests that you developed and deploy it as part of your production processes. And that's what we call as white box monitoring. And that's the key aspect of DataOps. And the final thing is you actually need to establish this system where whenever something goes wrong, you have something in place to stop the pipeline, and you have something to inform the people. You have something they can look at and do corrective action. With that, I will pause and open the forum for discussion. And I think, Anna, there are some questions online who are here, so we can start taking the questions. Anna?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not seeing the questions.
Okay. Is there a problem on the audio?
No, it's for some reason I have the echo.
Okay. Maybe my room in the room is getting echo. Any questions, anything?
So I have a question regarding data reconciliation. Why does it happen in general? Like that, I couldn't understand. There is a mismatch. Yeah, where is it coming from?
Okay. Let me go back to the slide, right? Let's take one example here. Okay, let's look at this example, right? I received a file, okay? And I loaded, actually, let me take another example, hold on. Okay, let's take this example, right? I received a file that has a customer, let's say 10 customers. And I built a ETL pipeline that loads these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 customers into this, right? If you're testing or you're monitoring, how do you know how many records should be there in this area, Anna? The only way you don't know. The only way you know if you count the records from the source. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? So the reconciliation, when your expectations are dynamic, and this is very unique to data testing, you need to get data from the file, and you need to get data from the table, and you need to reconcile and then compare 10 records, 10 records. ID 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, where did I get 4? You can't get 4. Then if they're matching, first name matching, last name matching. So without reconciliation, you cannot do data testing, any kind of data testing, because validation, simple testing, rule-based testing will only cover maybe 20 to 30% of the use cases.
Oh. Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes. The question is from Suchita. Is the reconciliation output in CVS format?
No, sorry, what was the question?
Suchita, do you want to start talking? You can turn on your...
Hey, this is Sachita. I was wondering, how do you see the reconciliation result? When the process runs, does it throw a output? How do you see that output? I was assuming it comes out in a CVS format.
I'll show you the example, right? Here, if you see, this is source and this is target. Right? And when you compare it, see, it gives a reconciliation report. So date of birth from source, date of birth is the green and blue.
Yes.
Right? So it actually is a XML report or JSON or something that you can actually see in the report format. And this, see, you can see side by side.
Yes, that's what I was asking.
It's very powerful.
Yes, I see that.
Any other questions?
The performance is monitored, or it changes depending on the load of the data, how many records it is scanning?
Usually it is, it usually depends on the number of records.
Right.
Okay. but it is not linear because we do in parallel comparison in memory, right? We put buffers and do in parallel processing. It's like it goes up, but not linearly. It's like like a slow curve.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
For the questions, you can turn on the microphone and you just speak. That's fine. You can also text it. Yeah, I think the the little echo is because Sandesh has the speakers on, but that's okay.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Let me
That's
reduce the
okay.
volume of the. Yeah, I think. Do you hear echo now?
Yeah, now it's fine. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. I have another question. So you have a tool, and without this tool, like I understand that this is data testing being done by how to say, is it done manually? Are there like
No,
other,
okay. So I think your question is, hey, you have a product and okay, you can do reconciliation and this thing with your product, but how will I do it manually, correct?
can it be even done manually? Is that something
No,
that
it
people
cannot
do?
be done manually because what happens is your data, let's say source data is in a file, okay, and your target data is in a database. The only way manually you'll do is you will extract in an Excel, extract from the database in Excel, and then manually compare. It's not possible. So, but what our product does is it enters it puts one connection in the file, one connection in the database, and brings and does the comparison. And even if you do it in Excel manually, you can do maybe 100 records, 1,000 records. Beyond that, you can't do it, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
what I
impossible.
wanted to know, because usually you work with large data files. It's not like
Yeah,
hundreds.
no, it's not possible because then people, what they do sampling, take random records and check, and then and they manually compare, like visually looking at each other. But then the problem is you, you are leaving 99% of the data and you're not testing, correct?
Yeah. So because our session today is talk about operations, how does it
Yeah.
fit with operation on a daily basis? Because
So
go ahead.
So what happens is the reason it connects with the operations is very simple. The development team has developed the rules, right? But if you don't deploy them in production, the operation people don't know the business rules, right? Correct. Operation people don't have the time to create the rules. All they monitor is if the data was created, if the process ran or didn't run. They don't know if the process ran but the data processing was not done correctly. So you have to embed these rules in your as you deploy your ETL process. You need to deploy these audits in the production, and the result of this thing is accessible to the ops people to take decisions. Oh, the process it ran successfully, but the data was not transformed correctly, right? And so I need to go and reach out to somebody in a level 2 or level 3 support. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was thinking about, like, I know that in financial institutions, if there is some transactions, they do it like end of the day. Is that what BI? Because I know that BI it's a discipline. You don't do it once. You do it like every day or something like that. And then my question is that part of the daily process, the data reconciliation?
Yeah, it is daily. It's not even daily. It's every time the process runs, you have to do the reconciliation. Every time the process runs, you have to do the validations because every opportunity you give it to do a mistake, it will do a mistake, right? So if I receive the file 5 times a day, I need to validate the file 5 times a day because if I leave once, then I don't know what has happened over there. And it depends on the criticality of the data. You can load all the data and then at the end of the day, you can validate or reconcile. But then what happened during the day, the 24 hours or 12 hours when the data was there, so all the people who consume the data is going to have bad data. So it depends on your risk appetite and how much you are ready to let go.
All right. Any other questions from the audience here?
I have a question,
Mm-hmm.
and this is Suchita here. I was thinking this tool strictly does the data validation, data reconciliation, or does it track if a new file has been received or the file has, let's say I have
Format change.
format change, data change where the source company never informed us, like, things have changed in the file and you end up finding, because that can cause a major issue in the reconciliation. So my question is, does the tool track those kind of issues before even it starts loading to the staging database?
Yes, it has the cap. I didn't show each and everything over here. But yes, it does do that. It can track file changes. It can track a lot of things. You can have scripts, column. If the column locations have changed, it can track. It can even do the checksum file comparison. So all those capabilities are there.
Yeah, I was wondering. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sorry, I have a question. If you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So this example shows like a simple name, last name, email. However, in the real time, let's say you have a transactions, millions of transactions 1 hour. Like let's assume your Visa or MasterCard sending actual complex data, right, each time. And it happens like in milliseconds. So the question is, can this work on real time and with large data, and how this going to compute it? Because it seems very complex, right? Each time you reconcile data.
Yeah, let me answer. So your question, there are two parts to your question. One is the real time, okay, and the second time is second part is the volume of data, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this, and actually, there's a third part in your question is complexity, because in real life the data is never that simple, like that the examples I have shown here. Okay. So let me start with the complexity part first. So, for example, this product is used in like Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, not JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and all the financial firms, right? So it is designed, it's a rules engine, so you can create very complex rules, and many times monitoring of one aspect requires multiple audit rules to check that. So the answer to your first part of the question, the complexity, yes, it can almost take any form of complexity, and we can monitor it. Okay, so that is there. Then let's talk about volume. The product can do millions of records per second, so volume is not an issue. It's a distributed processing framework, and there are a lot of, I can talk along about that. But fundamentally, this product is designed to reconcile or validate data at scale. So for example, we used to receive instrument prices, market prices in the daily. And what happens is Bloomberg says instrument prices, stock prices, Reuters sends stock prices. Every night we have to compare them, and you have to make sure that the price difference, end of day prices are not different more than 0.0001 cent or something like that, right? So yeah, the second part is, yes, it is designed for high volume monitoring, reconciliation, validation, and testing. The third part of your question is real time, or every microsecond it is coming, or nanosecond it is coming. The product is not designed for that. It is more like every batch, like every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, because it has the capabilities to do delta. So you can say only reconcile the new data that came, and you can do it. But if you want to do in nanosecond and microseconds, just like one record at a time, then you will have to look for like rules engine, like IBM rules engine, or there is JRules, and there are other products which are more suited for transactional system. So this is more for data processing, a lot of data, and what you call incremental batches if you want to do, or near real time. Absolutely, it can do high volume. It can do complex role. It can do, but it's not designed for nanoseconds and microseconds. There are different tools for that. Did I answer your question?
It actually answered them a little bit even more. So I have a follow-up question then. What's the...
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So for example, if I use IBM tools, right, and it can process the large amount of data with their rules, then what's the benefit of not using IBM ODM and using the, let's say, this IceDQ?
Excellent question. Their tools are designed for like a record level validation, right? So there, for example, I'll give an example, right? IBM Business Rules Engine, right? It is designed, so every time, for example, you are ordering something, so let's say you're giving discounts. Sandesh is a 10-year customer, so give him a different discount, or somebody is a 1 year, and you can change these rules. So they were designed for transactional systems. This product is designed for batch, big processes where the nightly data is coming, and your credit card transactions are coming, or trades are coming, positions are coming, orders are coming. So you need so if you have bulk, IBM tool cannot do the bulk processing. I forgot the name of the product, but they cannot do bulk processing. They can only do real time check record by record transactional systems. So think about this, like ETL tool versus transactional system, data warehousing. So that's the difference. Makes sense? Or
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I got it now. Thank you.
But if you elaborate like an actual example, then I can actually tell you how it will work in that scenario, if you have one example.
Yeah, in this case, I won't, because like you explained that real-time transactions, how that works. But batch processing, I am not really familiar with. I guess I would compare this tool to Click, right? Click, or what's the other tools which I have an idea?
Yeah, but this more falls under the data testing, data monitoring, data observability space, which are fundamentally what you call the data quality space, or data reliability space, or data ops space. So there are different platforms in that. But I get your point. The idea is this is a different perspective of empowering your testing team, empowering your ops team, to ensure that they have some tools and things in hand that monitors the data pipeline for them.
Yeah, because it seems like if it's batch processing, if something has to happen later, like even data is corrupt, you have to get this batch data afterwards, right? That's why I was asking this real-time question. If I already processed like a 1 million transaction, is already processed and somewhere in database, right? Results in RDR, whatever.
Yeah.
And now if I'm using your tool to reconciliation, is already have, the data is already there. Things happened, After that, then basically we validating this afterwards to see what mistakes we have done or what kind of wrong data we consumed.
Yeah, but afterward there are two parts to it, right? Unless the ETL there are what you call is inline and inline and offline this thing monitoring. Inline means the process runs for example, right? The process runs, and immediately after that you check it before the next process executes. So that's inline, and it has the capability to stop the process. Offline means you run everything, and end of the day you run the quality scores and check and do all those things. That is a different use case. So, but we recommend that you do inline monitoring, inline checking, inline audit, rather than waiting for the end of the day. But remember one thing, regardless of what I say or what somebody says, you have to run the ETL process or data pipeline, and then only, because unless you do something, I can't audit you. So this is the 4I principle. You do the transaction and I will audit you. Now the question is, when do I audit you? Do I audit you immediately, or do I audit at the end of the day, or do I audit after 1 year? So that's like, depending on the importance of those audits.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, Anna, before we close?
Anybody else with the questions? All right. Thank you so much for another amazing webinar. We have been on 3 now, and every webinar is recorded. It will be posted in the InnovateQA Events YouTube channel. There is a link to this channel in the chat. Thank you, Dmitro. Also, definitely follow up with Sandesh if your company is interested in the tool like that. It's an amazing tool. It's been on the front kind of with large data reconciliation companies who have millions of records, mainly financials. If you're in financial business or in AI business, then this tool is for you. Regarding InnovateQA events, we just had amazing conference in Seattle. There will be another conference organized in San Francisco. So please stay tuned to InnovateQA events, innovateqaevents.com. And find us on LinkedIn, follow up on LinkedIn, and we're gonna do more amazing events online and virtual as well. And thank you, Sandesh. If you have any parting words, please do.
No, thank you, everybody. There is I will strongly suggest to look at the earlier videos because there is a data testing, data migration testing, and this is it's a mix. So I understand that a lot of people might not have the context, but hey, I am here. If you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn or something. I'll just put this in front of you. So let me know. I'll reach out. I'll talk to you and figure out if you need any help from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.